Russia has never abandoned its strategy of military pressure in the Baltic Sea and surrounding regions for many years. Especially after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Poland among the regional countries focused intensely on the possibility that it could be next in line. Because the Warsaw government knew very well, even before the war began, that Putin would seek to control the Suwalki corridor and gain the ability to continuously monitor ships passing through Baltic waters from Kaliningrad. Poland's goal was to secure at least naval freedom along its more than 500-kilometer-long Baltic coastline. With its fleet of approximately 45 ships, Poland had to protect its Gdynia headquarters. It also wanted to operate its vessels freely in the strategic areas stretching from Świnoujście to Krynica Morska. What if we told you that Poland had already built a transit canal opening to the Baltic waters that bypassed Russian pressure even before the Ukraine war started? Yes, you heard that correctly. Warsaw possesses a transit corridor near the middle of the Vistula Spit that directly connects the Gulf of Gdansk to the Vistula Lagoon. And this canal corridor is suitable for the transit of Poland's small and medium-sized corvettes, missile boats, mine hunters, and unmanned surface vessels. Surprising but true. Warsaw built this bypass route for just $450 million, and today, this structure has become one of the most important shields against Russia in the Baltic. Putin's uncompromising stance in the region has been forced to confront a single masterful engineering move. Polish ships no longer have to pass through the Russian-controlled Strait of Baltiysk. The effects of this small but highly strategic bypass route on Russia and the gains obtained by the other Baltic countries, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, will surprise you greatly. However, how this canal project that helps relieve the Baltics was brought to life is even more remarkable. Because nothing was as easy as it appeared. Poland's acquisition of this advantage and its right to sail its ships in the Baltic without seeking Russian permission witnessed a very long process. Polish sailors and merchants had to endure psychological and economic pressure for decades, because the control of these waters and those critical choke points on the map had once been left entirely at Russia's mercy. It all began at the narrow Strait of Baltiysk, where the Vistula Lagoon meets the sea. For years, Polish commercial vessels had to pass through this Russian-controlled strait and obtain permission from Moscow even to reach ports in their own homeland. This dependency stemmed from the unjust borderline drawn by Soviet map engineers in 1945 that split the lagoon in two, a line personally established by Joseph Stalin. The Soviets drew the border so cunningly that Poland's only outlet to the open sea lay directly in the heart of Soviet military territory. Throughout the Cold War, the Soviet Union used these waters like its own inland sea, completely paralyzing Poland's maritime activities. Especially between 2006 and 2010, Russia imposed a full maritime ban on the strait, placing the region under a virtual commercial quarantine. Russian border guards would hold Polish ships for hours, conduct endless document inspections, and turn vessels back at the slightest pretext. This ruthless blockade caused the economic collapse of the Elbląg port in northeastern Poland, once a historic trading center. The Elbląg shipyards, which had been a busy commercial hub, were left to rust and silence for years due to Russia's suffocating policies. Russia would close the strait at the smallest political crisis, hold ships for days, and turn the area into an open-air prison for Poland. But the Warsaw government finally decided to break this historical yoke and declare full independence in its own waters. The official opening date of the canal was not chosen by coincidence. The canal was opened on September 17, 2022, the 83rd anniversary of the Soviet Union's invasion of Poland, sending a very clear symbolic message to Moscow. At this very point, the Nowy Świat Canal, which cuts through the thin sand strip known as the Vistula Spit, entered the picture as the most critical intervention on the map. This massive project created an entirely new 22.8-kilometer waterway directly linking the Gulf of Gdansk with the Vistula Lagoon. Although only 1.5 kilometers of the canal actually cut through land, the seismic effect it created across the region was equivalent to a fault line thousands of kilometers long. During construction, as engineers carried out enormous excavation works, significant amounts of valuable Baltic amber were unearthed from the soil in the area. The excavation was so extensive that thousands of truckloads of earth were hauled away for months, physically reshaping the geography. The canal structure is equipped with a special sea lock system that prevents the mixing of the Baltic Sea's salty water with the lagoon's fresh water. This engineering detail is extremely important. because Russia had spent years spreading fear to the entire world that the project would cause a massive ecological disaster. In addition, two massive synchronized swing bridges were built, one opening while the other closed, to ensure uninterrupted road traffic. Millions of cubic meters of sand extracted from the area were used to create the artificial Estonian island in the middle of the lagoon as a bird sanctuary, establishing an environmental balance. With this move, Poland proved to all of Europe that it was protecting nature while taking a very important step to counter Russia's insidious black propaganda disguised as environmentalism. Now ships can enter the lagoon directly from the Polish mainland without ever entering the dangerous Kaliningrad waters that carried the constant risk of closure. On the other hand, the Warsaw administration gained far more than simply drawing a line on the map with this high-budget project. Because today, with increasing Russian activity along its eastern borders, this canal is an invaluable and uninterrupted logistical artery for the Polish army. If an army cannot reach a region within its own territory by sea, defending that region becomes almost impossible from a military strategy perspective. Although the canal's 4.5-meter depth is not suitable for massive warships, it serves as a perfect covert transit point for small, fast military patrol boats and advanced unmanned surface vessels. With the ongoing deepening works planned for completion by the end of 2026, vessels up to 100 meters in length will be able to use this route at full capacity. In a sense, Polish special forces have gained the ability to infiltrate the depths of the Vistula Lagoon in seconds using small and medium-sized craft via this canal in case of urgent need. Polish Coast Guard boats, which possess incredible maneuverability in shallow waters, can now maintain uninterrupted 24/7 control over the lagoon waters. Furthermore, the resupply of ammunition and fuel for land units along the border can be delivered to Elbląg port via this secure waterway without entering Russian observation range or fire envelope. We can say that the Polish 16th Mechanized Division, tasked with defending the region, now has an alternative supply line for its armored vehicles and artillery batteries thanks to this canal. In the event of a possible conflict, even if roads and railways are targeted, this waterway could prevent military units from running out of ammunition. However, this strategic comfort obtained is only the first clever move in a great chess game when considering Russia's massive military presence in the region. Because just a few dozen kilometers northeast of the canal lies Kaliningrad, Russia's heavily armed exclave that sits like a dagger thrust into the heart of Europe. The main headquarters of Russia's famous Baltic fleet, the Baltiysk naval base, waits like a cold breath on the neck of this new canal. At this enormous military base, the 336th Naval Infantry Brigade, known for its rapid operation capability, and numerous combat ships stand constantly on alert. The land threat grows even larger with demonstrations by the Russian 11th Army Corps, specially structured for this region and composed of thousands of elite soldiers. Additionally, modern Russian fighter aircraft operating from the Chokehold air base further inland constantly conduct shows of force over the lagoon waters. For Poland, this picture means building a massive infrastructure right next to a powder keg that could ignite at any moment and having to protect that structure. This enormous military concentration right under its nose forces the Warsaw government to remain on alert 24/7 to keep the canal secure. That is precisely why Poland must equip its border lines, observation towers, and Coast Guard assets with the highest level of technology to stay prepared against this tense situation. This security network operates in direct integration with the multi-billion-dollar East Shield project, which turns Poland's eastern borders into a fully digital and physical fortress. Because from Warsaw's perspective, this bypass route is truly vital. Yet when we widen the map a bit, we see that the butterfly effect created by this canal is rewriting the fate of the entire Baltic region, not just Poland. This $450 million investment serves as the most concrete and vital key for bypassing Russia for Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, countries whose borders are under direct threat. Especially Lithuania, located right in the heart of the famous and dangerous Suwalki corridor, squeezed between Kaliningrad and Belarus. This narrow strip of land, only 65 kilometers wide and covered with dense forests, is defined by military strategists as the hardest point to defend in Europe. Due to its geography of marshes and dense woodland, the passage of large military convoys through here is already naturally very difficult and dangerous. In the event of a possible Russian military operation, the closure of the Suwalki corridor would mean the immediate severance of the Baltic countries' only physical land connection to NATO. Here, Poland's Vistula Canal comes into play with an invaluable role precisely when this nightmare scenario becomes reality. If land routes are completely cut and borders sealed, small logistics support vessels that can covertly enter the lagoon via Poland's Elbląg port will create an entirely new alternative sea route to provide breathing room for the Baltic countries. Lithuania gains enormous strategic military advantage from the breaking of Russian naval control so close to its own capital and borders. This not only reduces Lithuania's logistical dependence on the Klaipėda port alone, but also diversifies supply lines coming from the south. The Vilnius government views this project realized right on its doorstep as a huge beacon of hope for NATO's eastern flank, because thanks to the canal, suitable vessels of friendly NATO forces will have the chance to maneuver much more comfortably in this sensitive area of the Baltic Sea without being subject to Moscow's annoying permission. Estonia and Latvia to the north also feel the diplomatic and military relief provided by the security of their southern flank through this new maritime logistics. As can be seen, this maritime infrastructure resembles the vision of major projects, such as disconnecting the Baltic countries' energy grids from Russia and connecting them to Europe, and Rail Baltica. Moreover, this brand new route enables the immediate delivery of urgently needed ammunition, critical medical supplies, and rapidly deployable light armored units to the Baltic countries in times of crisis. In NATO headquarters war simulations today, not only road routes, but also this unique maritime route offered by the Vistula Canal can now be factored into the defense of the Baltic countries. The heavy psychological superiority Russia has exerted over the Baltics for years via Kaliningrad may soften somewhat in the cool waters of this canal. The regional maritime logistics that used to be paralyzed by a single Russian warship arbitrarily closing the strait now flows securely through these free waters under Poland's absolute control. This tremendous situation increases the collective defense resilience of the Baltic trio within NATO, while significantly undermining Moscow's decades-long blackmail politics in the region. Yet even though the canal has been filled with water, become operational, and vessels have begun to pass, the freezing Russian military threat blowing from the north has not been completely erased from the map. When you carefully examine radar activity in the region today, you can easily understand that Moscow still regards this strategic project as one of its biggest red lines. The Moscow administration continues to characterize the entry of NATO vessels into this lagoon as direct preparation for an attack on its sovereignty and national security. Due to this deep paranoia, Kaliningrad remains one of the most heavily armed anti-access/area denial zones in the world. Among the most frightening elements threatening the canal route, passing vessels, and the entire Vistula Lagoon are the famous Iskander-M ballistic missiles, capable of carrying nuclear warheads. These deadly missiles, positioned in hidden bases deep within Kaliningrad, possess perfect range to reduce every meter of the canal and surrounding infrastructure to ashes in seconds. With an operational range exceeding 500 kilometers, these missiles are capable of targeting not only the canal, but also strategic command centers much deeper inside Poland. This situation is so critical that the Polish army has had to deploy numerous advanced air defense systems and early warning radars to the area for the canal's defense. In the event of a possible crisis, the danger is not limited to this. Russia's S-400 air defense systems turn the airspace over the lagoon into an impenetrable, invisible electronic cage. These batteries, with a radar horizon of approximately 400 kilometers, track Polish F-35s that would take off to protect the canal from the moment of takeoff. For sudden threats from the sea, Bastion P anti-ship missiles deployed along the coast keep their radars active to instantly destroy any surface asset that dares approach the canal entrance. Russia's Baltic Fleet's silent mine-laying vessels and special sabotage units possess asymmetric potential to turn the lagoon waters into a formidable strategic blockade point overnight. In addition, Kinzhal hypersonic missiles carried by MiG-31K fighter jets operating from Chokehold Air Base provide a very fast and unstoppable strike capability against canal infrastructure. Moreover, the threats in this region are not limited to physical weapons alone. Massive electronic warfare systems, such as Murmansk-BN, can disrupt the radars, communication networks, and drones of vessels in the area. In particular, the intense jamming waves emitted by Krasuka force systems around the lagoon have the capacity to completely paralyze modern military communications. The loss of GPS signals by even civilian aircraft over the Baltic Sea in recent years lies behind exactly these dark electronic warfare bases operating in Kaliningrad. This enormous military shadow hanging directly above the map prevents Poland from relaxing for even a single moment, despite the success it has achieved. The Warsaw administration, within the scope of the East Shield project, is strengthening the surroundings of this strategic canal and its northeastern borders with the most modern optical sensors, drone networks, and deep fortifications. On both banks of the canal and in the surrounding forested areas, an extremely high state of military alert is meticulously maintained, as if a crisis could erupt across the border at any moment. Polish border guards and territorial defense forces patrol the shores of the lagoon day and night, continuously scanning the area against possible Russian naval sabotage. The Polish army keeps all defense scenarios on the table, active against a sudden Russian amphibious hybrid attack, naval infiltration attempt, or infrastructure sabotage from Kaliningrad. Because this project is seen as a bright door opening to the freedom Poland has dreamed of for years, therefore, losing this bypass route is something Warsaw can never afford to risk. What do you think about this? In the face of Russia's enormous and ruthless military buildup in Kaliningrad, will this new canal truly manage to remain an uninterrupted logistical lifeline in the event of a possible war? Or will the massive waterway on which Poland spent $450 million turn into a giant target that Russian missiles will mercilessly strike at the first outbreak of a major crisis? We look forward to your comments. To make long journeys more enjoyable, we also invite you to our Spotify where we present our video content. Thank you for choosing us. Presented by TGN.